and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Certified Primal Question Coach Tonya Peck, who is here to discuss her journey in overcoming guilt and shame, which will help make your mess your message for feeling and hope. And if you don't know what that means, you're going to find out quite shortly. Tonya is a certified group fitness and a spin instructor who leads by example, prioritizing physical health and mental wellness by empowering others to take those first steps towards those goals that set their heart on fire and get them out of their comfort zone. I love any conversations around comfort zones, I have to say. Tonya focuses on community and connection within that environment for positive accountability to break those belief barriers that are holding people back. Through Tonya's Certified Primal Question Coaching, she provides individual and group coaching to identify her clients' highest emotional needs while helping them discover how that need influences all personal and professional relationships. Tonya does this through identifying gifts, challenges, positive habits, as well as unhealthy ones. This knowledge creates more awareness around our actions and thoughts to live in our truth, to be known fully as authentic. Tonya's journey has not been an easy one, and we will likely get to talk more about that at the top of the interview here. But the last thing I'll give you is that Tonya focuses her energy on giving hope and encouragement to others with knowledge that their past doesn't define their future. Healthy relationships are possible, and all experiences are an opportunity for growth and impact. Tonya, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Gary, for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted, absolutely delighted. So let's start with your journey thus far. I mentioned very briefly there that it's been quite the journey that has given you the opportunity to be here today. So can you just tell me a bit more about your life journey, some of the challenges that you faced, and some of the influences that got you into the primal question coaching, please?
Sure, absolutely. Um, well, again, my name's Tanya, and I was born and raised in the Midwest in Nebraska. So I don't know if any of your listeners have even know where Nebraska is, but it's a great place to be from. And my sister and I grew up there. Gosh, most of our lives, was there for 20 years. And kind of something that you alluded to, just growing up, kind of some people have kind of the traditional, stories of mother, father, that type of stuff. Sometimes there's a little bit more just changes, changes in relationships, changes in life, maybe dysfunction, if you will, I guess would be, kind of the word, I guess maybe that would be a better to use. And in while I was growing up, my mom was divorced and married 6 times. So there was a lot of change. There was a lot of, people coming in and out, and those were the people that she married. So of course there was maybe some dating relationships or, those types of things as well. And the second marriage, I was 4. And I remember he, probably the way that he meant to um, provide the information as best as possible was basically, I remember we were sitting in a living room and I was 4 years old, and he pretty much just said, I'm not going to be here anymore and I'm going to be leaving, and kind of like as if I was 24, rather than 4. So
Mm.
I think from that very early age, I became an adult, or felt like it was my job to be the adult and not really be able to be the kid. I remember growing up, I always preferred to be around the adults, kind of feeling like I had to bear the responsibility, of those types of things. And so as my childhood evolved and kind of the unknown started to be more of the norm, I really started to lean into the question of like, am I loved? Am I wanted? I think as children, whether our environment is, textbook or not, we kind of connect the dots, in our kid logic.
Yeah.
There's things that maybe are said or done that we perceive right or wrong as, a forming of our identity and of what, we see that we need to kind of become as we grow up and, grow into adulthood. So for me, kind of really that was I've always felt safe and I felt secure in my home, which I'm very thankful for that, I know some experience trauma, in that way at a young age. And for me, it was more through the situation of divorce. And because of the divorces, it was more of my questioning if I was loved or wanted. Like, is there something that maybe I did or could do differently that could have changed the outcome, of what was
Right.
happening?
Right.
And of course, as an adult, now that, there isn't probably anything at all that I could have done, but at that time, you just connect the dots the way that you see them as they are. So growing up, as we went from like elementary school into junior high, and adolescence, trying to find myself, junior high is hard. Like I just got to shout out to people that have a heart for like junior high age teachers, all of that, because there's just a hot mess of like hormones and identity and what's going on. So I admire that so much because for me that was just a really challenging time in life, trying to figure out who I was, and I had a lot of missteps. So in finding that am I wanted, am I loved, it wasn't really strong in my home life, so I searched for it in other ways. So I always had a boyfriend. I felt like a boyfriend was very important, to my identity, and it kept me in that feeling of being loved or wanted. I didn't really pursue other relationships. I had a relationship in the wings before I ended the one before. So it was kind of, again, like a self-defense mechanism. Like, I don't want to be alone. I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So before I made a move, to something else, I always made sure I had the backup. So again, it was just really crazy thinking, but in my head, it kept me safe. It kept me like, okay, I know that this is what I need and this is what will keep me in that feeling. And so this is what I need to do. Kind of a little self-defense, mechanism kind of thing. Um, and so as I evolved with that, then there were some ups and downs at home. My parents start to get wind of, some of the things that I was interested in doing and decided that maybe I needed to go to counseling. So they took me to a counselor, and honestly, I was like, I'm not going to have this. I don't know why I'm here. I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to, talk to you and share my heart because I don't think that I should be here. So that didn't last very long. They could see that. I think he probably told them like, yeah, you're wasting your money. Like you just need to try something else. So then we went to church. And again, I think it was just in their minds the next logical thing. What do you do when your kids are acting crazy? You take them to a counselor, take them to church, start doing other things that maybe, others have suggested.
Yeah.
So we started going to a Bible teaching church, and I figured it was just, again, kind of a short stint. After a couple weeks, we would just go back to our normal routine. But we ended up continuing to go. So as a result, I decided to find the high school group that was meeting then. I was kind of on that cusp of like right before the end of junior high, beginning of high school. So I was able to go up to the high school group, which, that kind of was good, like dangle the carrot, like, ooh, I get to be with, bigger kids.
Yeah.
But really the benefit in that, and it's funny how like at the time we went to church because I was, kind of searching and not making good choices. But I think that maybe, looking back was God's way to kind of help me to get the direction that I was looking for in a positive way by surrounding me with people in this new environment that really were a great example of how you can be accepted and loved and appreciated for who you are, not what you have to offer. Because
Yeah.
I feel like before then I always felt like I had to bring something to the relationship, whether it be a friendship with another girl, whether it be, a romantic relationship with a boy, that they didn't like me for me, that there was something that I had to give in exchange for that love and
Yeah.
acceptance. And when I started going to this high school group, everybody was accepting of just me. And that was something new that I hadn't felt before. And it kind of opened my eyes to maybe what healthier relationships look like and
Mhm.
should be, a part of. So I definitely grew a ton in that and made some, really good connections, good choices. As a result, wanted to continue that faith journey and go to a Christian high school because knowing, myself enough that if I would kind of stay with the group of friends that I was with, not that they were good friends, but that, their influences and the things that they were into that I personally probably wouldn't be strong enough to stand up for those, things that maybe I felt were right. and I would just fall back into the people pleasing, they're like going with the flow, the peer pressure, all of those things. So I felt like for me, I just was like, okay, I'm going to, kind of turn over a new leaf, surround myself with people that like me for me, that have, a healthier perspective, that, have a faith in God, and that there's something more to this world, than just the here and now.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I loved the Christian high school. It was smaller, so there was lots of opportunities to pursue sports and to pursue music and things that maybe a larger high school wouldn't allow you to do unless you were really, really good, at that particular, I don't know, event. And so it provided a lot of opportunities in that way. And then my junior year in high school, that summer, there was just some personal things like in my family and personally that kind of started to take me back down that path of questioning the am I wanted, am I loved? And as a result, I found that when you're in that sweet space of feeling that your highest emotional need, if you will, which we'll talk more about, kind of there's 7 different types. And for me, like I said, just the way that I was brought up, it's the am I loved and wanted. But if you don't feel that, then you're starting to get that answered with a no or a maybe, then you start to kind of what I call scramble. You kind of start to do things to try to get that answer to a yes or no, and that usually is unhealthy habits, or again, back to that people pleasing, back to the things that once created that safety net for you. And so I was in a relationship, and, we were doing what we wanted to do, basically. And as a result, a couple months before we graduated from high school, I had an unplanned pregnancy. And being in that environment and knowing, that that was wrong, that that would be looked at as, it is a sin, obviously, but
Mhm.
that it was a little bit more just let's see. Some sin is kind of on the back end. You know what I mean? Like it's happening, but it's maybe a lie or it's not, or it's, something that's, I would say, insignificant to the world. And then there's those other things that are kind of wide open and it's something that is on full display. And even though it's the same in God's eyes, it definitely doesn't hold the same weight, in the eyes of friends and family and really the potential outcome of that.
Yeah.
So there were some upperclassmen that, went through that experience. And once they were open and honest with the school, they were asked to leave. So that kind of underneath that line of, don't be honest and upfront and ask for help, just keep it under wraps, still just put on that face, you're don't be transparent and truthful, because if you are, you won't be accepted and loved. So
Yeah.
I didn't say anything for those 2 months. I graduated just so that way I could. And then, it was just a huge disappointment to friends and family and honestly to myself, because I knew that it was behavior that I shouldn't be doing, but I didn't listen to that internal gut, that says this is wrong. Sometimes you have those moments in time, well, probably lots of times in our life, where there's that little, gut feeling that's saying, we might need to be thinking about this. And you can choose to listen or you can choose to ignore it. And
Yeah.
I chose to ignore it time and time again. Um, so I probably was doomed for some sort of consequence. It's just a matter of time. But again, that's all right. You're 17, you feel like you're invincible and you're just going to do whatever you want to do. So there we
Yeah.
go. But then after a couple months of kind of wrapping my head around that new normal and processing, I personally didn't feel like I wanted to give the baby up for adoption. I wanted to continue with the pregnancy. By this time, all the friends and family were aware. Some supported me, some didn't. The father, wanted to marry me and we were engaged. And we were just kind of going down that road of what was next, maybe what was expected, what was the right thing to do. And then I had a miscarriage. So it kind of added to the confusion of one, that happened, and then
Mhm.
two, kind of keeping it under wraps because I didn't feel like if I was honest and open and asked for that help and guidance, that it would be received in the way that I would have wanted. And then after all of that was on full display, then I had a miscarriage and it kind of just felt like, what was it for? And it led to a lot of just heartache and questioning and discouragement, and honestly just kind of started feeling like I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't. I knew what I was not that I did something bad, that I was bad, that I kind of held the weight of that experience and not feeling like I could be open and honest to anyone else, because if they knew that about me, they wouldn't love me or want to befriend me or, see me for who I was. And so that really just, I would say, kept me insecure, kept me from really sharing who I was. Like I was me, but there was always like another layer that was just never fully, shared with other people. And so I felt maybe it was easier to keep people at a distance
Yeah.
because, then you don't have to worry about being hurt if they do find out that there's more to you than meets the eye and you get that rejection. So it's easier to not even go there, to just continue on, be 80% of yourself and just know that that's enough.
Mhm.
Um, so I got married and thankfully been married for almost 35 years. So I'm very proud of that because again, I feel like that's a God thing because before that I chose people that definitely probably would not have remained married to for 35 years. And I'm not saying it's been easy, but I'm sure I gave him a run for his money, especially in the beginning, kind of testing those waters, like, do you really love me?
Yeah.
But it's been great. So aside from him knowing that part of me and, as we had kids and families and moved and met new people, that was just something that I never fully shared. And it wasn't until I was almost 30. So it was a good, 10, 12 years that I kind of lived under that weight of that experience. Um, because even with my dad, like we have a great relationship now, but we had a conversation shortly after that happened, and he just kind of was like, "Well, you should basically thank me for staying with you, for supporting you." Like it was, I don't know, that I should be thankful, rather than it just being a parent's job, to love unconditionally and to be there regardless of what. That it was kind of, something that he didn't really feel like he should have done or wanted to do. And
Yeah.
so we didn't talk for like even 3 or 4 years because I was just at that point like, you know what? Like I I don't know. If that's what love is, again, then I don't need it. I would
Yeah.
rather not have it. And again, that's another just part of like maybe self-isolating or protecting ourselves, which at the time seems like a good idea, but it's limiting you in other ways in life that you don't always realize until later. So finally, thankfully, I was at an event with a couple ladies and, we probably had a beverage. I'm not really sure what, kind of made me feel to where I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to spill the beans. And they were sharing, maybe some things that they had experienced as well. And when I shared that, they were, empathetic and they were sorry, but they weren't shocked. They weren't dismayed. They weren't gasping, at like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine, that you would do something like that. They were very welcoming and accepting and understanding. And it was amazing. Like that definitely was a turning point that even though, like my spouse, felt that way towards me and my mom and my sister, but just feeling like I could be transparent with someone that didn't, know me in that way and have it be okay was like definitely a turning point. So I feel like those of us that have experienced that type of trauma or just some disappointment that we are having a hard time forgiving ourselves and we feel like if we keep it quiet that it's better, but actually I feel like it just makes it even more just kind of ugly in our lives. It just continues to build and build and build, and the more we think, the bigger it gets, and then by just shedding light on it can really help to take that weight off, to provide healing, to start that journey of just understanding the why and kind of connecting the dots in a little better way that again doesn't say that you're the bad person or that you did something bad, but just there was maybe a reason for the behavior, and getting more context around that to start the forgiving and to start the healing, even if it's personally. Um, and so after that event, then, you know, it's interesting like that. It didn't seem like at the time, but now looking back, that created some confidence for me to pursue other things that I was always interested in, but just didn't feel like I deserved.
Yeah.
So I started school in my mid 30s. I went back to school for X-ray because I want to be in the medical field to help people. But again, with through my husband's journey and us moving every 3 years, we were never really in a situation where I could commit to a school program.
Yeah.
So we did that, moved to Charlotte, and then I've been in healthcare for 18 years in the area of mammography. So helping with women's breast health, being a part of their process, whether it be screening or, a diagnostic with biopsies and, cancer diagnosis and stuff like that. And just really valued being a part of their story in a positive way. And I know some people think, gosh, how can, a cancer diagnosis be positive? But, you're able to provide a lot of calm, in that situation and guidance and understanding and answering their questions and just being there as a support have meant so much. And I just love the technologists that I work with and the patients that I was able to kind of get to know and spend, especially in that capacity, you have more time with them than maybe you do in a screening environment. Um, so as a result, because I enjoyed doing that so much, and I just kind of started feeling God leading to not better, but maybe just something more, something different, maybe how I could continue to give impact or provide impact in a positive way, but take it outside of the brick and mortar, outside of just staying with just women's health or breast health. And in addition, when I started going to school and we moved to Charlotte, then that kind of got me curious about doing more physically. So again, I was not an athlete in high school. I was more like the cheerleader person, and I didn't like to work up a sweat. I didn't want to, like go all in on that type of stuff. But I went to a spin class and I kind of got hooked. And so I've been a spin instructor and a group fitness instructor for the last 15 years as well, and nothing that I ever thought I was capable or would be interested in doing. But I really feel that like just starting to grow and create that understanding of who I was and why I made the decisions I made, and sharing with someone that was safe and that still encouraged me and accepted me, created opportunities then for me to feel confident to step into going back to school or pursuing, health and fitness. And then those types of things, even though, you start sometimes to just lose a few pounds, but now it's a part of life. Like it's something that I can't imagine not doing. And it's been a great source of community because being in that wanted and loved, I felt like an island was better. Like I just thought I don't need others. I can take care of myself. Like it's safer that way. And I found that, through this situation too, that it's amazing to have friendships and to have that accountability and to have that support. And the thing about our primal question is that it's what we need, but also what we give most to others. So by me really knowing the value of feeling wanted and loved, I give that to everyone around me freely. Like that's my gift. And so if there's someone that in the class or really in a social setting or a work environment that is kind of, off in the corner or not a part, then I will like seek them out and make sure that they feel included and supported and a part of the group. And so I think that's also the amazing thing of our primal question is that even though it can kind of it's the thing that we really value most, but it's the thing that we give best, and that's kind of our superpower. So it's kind of cool how it can, just overlap and be something that we can give to the best of our ability.
Incredible journey. Absolutely fantastic journey. Do you know the one thing that really struck out for me is that the intention.
Mhm.
That there wasn't a lot of ignoring anything that was happening to you, whether you dealt with it the way that Tonya today would deal with it or
Right,
not. You kind of
exactly.
can't because you're a different person in those days.
Right.
But there was like a heightened level of awareness
Mhm.
of what's happening, trying your best to decipher what that means,
Right.
what your best next course of action could be,
Yeah.
even when you have those voices,
Yeah.
saying, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
You were kind of like, "I think I've got this," until you
Right.
don't, and then
Right.
you're moving forward from there. So
Exactly.
that heightened level of awareness, I think, is something that shines through, certainly when you
Mhm.
start to look at your life and your intention and your purpose and what you would like to give, in terms of the gifts that you were chatting about there. So you mentioned that the primal questioning.
Mhm.
So for folks that have no idea what
Yeah.
that's about, I know you've briefly touched on it a couple of
Sure.
times. Can you just explain a wee bit more about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a certification that I went through with Mike Foster, and he wrote a book actually on it, and it's called The Seven Primal Questions. And he did years of research, and he's a coach as well. And he has just found that, like, basically people operate kind of on one primal need. And we have all of these seven, but because of the way that we were raised or our background or the things that I talked about before, there's one that usually kind of stands out. And
Right.
so the different seven questions are: am I safe? In like their relationships, am I secure? Usually lends to a little bit more of a financial, need. Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? And do I have purpose?
Mm.
So those seven questions, again, predominantly one, maybe two, because sometimes I feel like I can operate one way personally, but then in a workplace, maybe have, a different kind of role that I, find important. And so when we're in life, and usually those questions kind of are formed around age 7, 8. And again, not necessarily something even that our parents did or didn't do. So it's not finding blame by any reason, but like some people in our coaching community, there was like a family member, that something happened with, or, some kids or siblings that, there was some things that happened that just, again, kind of in kid logic connected the dots in a way that they decided this is what life means to me and how I need to operate.
Yeah.
So when we're going through life, when we are getting yes to that question, then we're operating in our best self. But when we're getting a no or a maybe to that question, that's when we can sometimes make decisions that aren't in our best interest. And I think just creating awareness, because there's definitely times, probably every day, that there's a situation where maybe I wouldn't feel, wanted or loved, or just, like my husband's is safe. He had a family, his grandparents basically kicked him, his three sisters, and his parents off the farm and said, "Sorry, you're not farming this anymore. You need to go figure something else out." So,
Right.
even though he was a kid, just kind of that conversation of being around, like, where are we going to live? Like, how are we going to, pay? Like, where are we going to go? And so for him, feeling safe, in his, in the walls, and feeling secure in his relationships are very, very important to him.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just feel like we can learn when we're not feeling that way and become aware of it, so that way we don't make those decisions based on fear or based on insecurities, that we can see it for what it is and
Yeah.
then question it and be like, okay, because the goal is then to operate from a place of I am loved and I am wanted.
Yeah.
Because when we come from those, where those questions become statements, then we can feel empowered and
Mm.
confident and make the right decision for us and not feel like we are on the defense, that we're being proactive and offensive in our life.
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, it sounds, when you list off the seven there, it sounds like they're so simple, in
Mm.
terms of your ability to be able to understand what they mean and answer it honestly and openly. I'm fairly sure the second thing that I said there about answering it honestly and openly it can be where the magic happens, because someone, one of the things that you mentioned was successful. That's a very subjective term. It can mean different things to different people, even under different circumstances and situations.
Sure.
So when you're coaching, is there a level of education? Because I imagine as you peel back the layers, or as the client peels back the layers with your help, of course, that they start to say, I thought it used to mean this, but it actually means that, and I don't know how I feel about that. And the answer turned from a yes to a no, or a maybe, or I don't know. And then you get the nuances of the coaching journey.
Exactly. Yes. I think so many behaviors, at least right now, are based on just the behavior itself, like coaching, or whether it be wellness, mental health, all those things. Like, they're focusing more on the behaviors, like don't do this, do this. And then think of it as a tree. So like the branches are the behaviors, the trunk is the emotions or the feelings that are behind those behaviors.
Yeah.
And it's a good place to start. But eventually, like if you say, just don't eat that chocolate, or don't gamble, then I mean, you can do that for so long, but then usually that behavior will come back. You can stay strong for so long, but it's really hard, to do that forever. And
Yeah.
so I think with the coaching, really getting past the behaviors getting deeper, like I said, from to the emotions and the feelings that are leading to that, and really getting to the root. So getting to what's underneath, getting to those feelings and situations that they may not even have been aware, kind of created some of that impact and context for the feelings that they've had. So, like with the wellness, I love the fact that if I'm helping someone that maybe has a fitness goal, and for some reason they just can't quite meet it, or they keep getting a roadblock in a certain way, or they get so close and then they, go backwards. And really being able to tap into their primal question and finding out, like for this one client, she was always questioning, am I good enough? So there again, like she would get close, but then there was something inside of her, from, that was just not really discussed or really investigated, that always made her question, am I good enough? So anytime she would get close to maybe some of those goals or successes, something inside of her would be like, nope, it's not for me. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough, and all those types of just thought patterns that aren't correct. But
Yeah.
until we challenge them or maybe investigate them, we don't even realize sometimes that they're there. And that's, something that if we can understand more and get more context to those behaviors and emotions, then if we want to change the behavior, there's going to be a lasting change. And it's
Yeah.
not just because you should or shouldn't do something, it's because you are consciously making a choice to do
Yeah.
that thing or to not do thing, and to understand why. So I think just definitely getting to the roots and not just staying at the top level, that sometimes is so easy to do, or clients want an easy fix. They're like, all right, here's my problem. Like, let's just get this done and
Yeah.
keep stepping, which believe me, I get it. Like I would prefer the quick and easy route too.
Yeah.
But that's not really lasting change. So I
Yeah.
think that those people that are looking for a lasting change and lasting transformation, you have to be willing to dig a little deeper and
Yeah.
spend a little more time in those spaces that are uncomfortable, to really start the healing that's going to make a difference for you foremost.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the kind of age old question when a client comes with a particular issue or challenge and they say, how long is it going to take me to fix this?
Right.
And my question is, how long did it take you to manifest it in the first place? And if they say
Exactly.
35 years, then I'll maybe jokingly say, well, we could fix that in half an hour. Sorry, I thought it was more than that,
Right,
but
right.
it's almost like the perceived, not to insult any clients out there, but the perceived ridiculousness of
Yeah.
it did take me decades, generations to get to this
Mhm.
spot. It's not going to take an hour or two or three or
Exactly.
four to create that meaningful and lasting
Exactly.
change that you
Yeah.
talked about. So I wanted to switch gears, and I think the primal questions will certainly be intertwined with everything that we chat about. But in terms of one thing I had in my mind was community,
Mhm.
and the benefits of being part of a selective community. You mentioned church being part of that.
Yeah.
People can understand,
Yeah.
religious communities and how they can benefit if they so choose or wish going forward. For me, more based on the journey that you explained,
Mhm.
Tonya, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much community was truly part of your being until that almost epiphany conversation you had with your colleagues, whether some drinks were or were not
Right.
involved at all, and to see that there could be a different reaction to the same type and style of information, and
Yeah.
how did that foster your growth to start to create community and really that meaningful, positive, lasting change that you've had ever since?
Mm, That's a great question. Yes, definitely up until then, about every 3 years we would move. So I think
Right,
that was my excuse, as well,
right,
not to create connection and not to create friendships. But definitely so important for accountability, for that connection, to just feel known and seen. And we definitely aren't islands, and I don't think God intended us to be islands.
yeah,
Even though again we feel like it's safer, it's it's isolating, and it can lead to a lot of just depression, anxiety, and thoughts that can be untrue. And if you don't have that community, even if it's a small group, because sometimes I know some people prefer a lot of friends that are maybe a little more surface, and some prefer a handful that are have really deep friendships. So
yeah,
really I don't think that there's a right or wrong. It just depends to how how you operate and how you see your friendships evolving and what you prefer. But
Yeah.
I think just definitely having that source of just feedback, for someone to kind of be in your space and say, I think you might be seeing that incorrectly, or what if we look at it this way, or just
Yeah.
even if it's for a sounding board,
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend more than one friend, because I know sometimes in the past too, I've had like a best friend or even a spouse where you expect them to be all the things that you need to be, from a friend. And
Yeah.
that's impossible to have. And one of the things that came to mind before we talked and about friendship and community, Jeannie Allen, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she is a Christian author and she wrote a book. It was around COVID, and it was about just the benefit of the community and friendships and meet your people. That's the name of the book, called Meet Your People.
Right.
And so she has lots of ideas, but she had a really great analogy that basically everyone should have at least 5 different types of friends, and they kind of each meet a different need. So I wrote those down, and her recommendation was one, that we all need to have a cheerleader in our
Yeah.
lives, just someone that can be like, you go for it. Like, you want to climb Mount Everest? Okay, that sounds amazing. I think you can do it,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
person. A balcony person is what I would say. The second type of person you need is a mentor, because, we just need those people that can challenge us and encourage us. So I think that's key. The third person was a confidant. So someone that we can really share maybe those deeper challenges or honest conversations, that you might not want to share with a lot of people, but have someone that you feel is, kind of your ride or die, I guess.
Yeah.
I have a couple that know my sister and knows everything about me. And it's really nice to know that, when I talk, she's like, yep, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fourth person is a realist. So again, someone that maybe the cheerleader's excited for you to do Mount Everest, but the realist might, need to have you check a few boxes, make sure we're gonna get at this properly. And the fifth type of friend that they recommend is an adventurer. So again, just someone that is like, let's go, let's have fun, let's, not keep it heavy, and, just do life and make it a party. So I love those kind of 5 different types of people, whether it be, again, your spouse and a combination of friends, or maybe it's family, but just having that combination of people to really speak into your life the best way possible. So I've been really focusing on that, because I think it's easy for me to look at my husband, for example, and want him to be all of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't be all those things. He doesn't know how to be. So
Yeah.
again, finding specific people in your life. And if you don't have one of those people, kind of being intentional, like you
Yeah.
mentioned about looking for it. Like maybe it's someone at work, maybe it's someone at the gym, maybe it's a neighbor that you just haven't met yet, but could actually fill one of those roles that would add more value to your life. So I
Yeah.
love those types of people.
That's fabulous. I love the way that she's listed them down. I thought at one point I was almost thinking you're explaining a coach, but
Mm,
coaches aren't necessarily mentors, and depending on the type and style of coach you're working with, adventurer might not quite be exactly what you need. They might be, you might be
right.
someone to kind of bring you back in and say, maybe you should just calm down. That might be the realist as well. And it takes me back to a good friend of mine from back home in Scotland many, many, many years ago. And it was really the first time I'd started to think about this. And this is probably about 30 years ago, actually, where she had said, you get different things from different people.
Hmm.
And it was just a thing she used to say all the time. And I really started to resonate with that, to give myself a break, I think. And
Yeah.
so when I'm in certain relationships, that I could say, oh, like you're not going to get that from me.
Right.
That's not my jam, but you can probably get that from someone else,
Exactly.
and kind of move forward from there, which is absolutely great. And and it's a thing that we need to be able to know and understand of other people
Hmm.
and of ourselves. So anyone listening to this who have suddenly got this pang of whatever reaction you had that
Right.
says, oh, I was relying on my spouse for all of those things, and
Hmm.
that's just not what they do. I
Hmm.
think I owe someone an apology. Please take this information and
That's
go and
right.
apologize to that person and course correct your behavior as you move forward. This has been a fabulous conversation. I really would love to delve into the primal questions a wee bit more, and I think it's probably part of a separate conversation that we
Hmm.
can really delve in and figure out what it means for people, and figure out if the answer is I don't know, or no, or sometimes maybe kind of not
Yeah.
really. how we can help them move forward. But in the interest of time,
Yeah,
we'll start to do the wrap up here.
sure.
And as you know, this is called the best you.
Yeah.
And one question I love to ask each and every one of the guests is, what is one regular tactic strategy that you employ that gives Tonya the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself?
I've been thinking about this question, and I know that it's probably going to seem boring, but I really do prioritize physical wellness
Yep.
and movement. So I'm not saying that I, go out and hit it hard every day, but just getting in 30 minutes. My goal is at least 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the day.
Yeah.
And just getting time in nature, walking outside if I can. I get some of my best ideas and just quiet time and thinking, from that. So even it's not just the act of, getting out there and going for a walk, but just the opportunity to kind of have that quiet time as well.
Yeah.
And then alternate it, with classes, or I'm training for a half marathon in Maine.
Oh,
That's
congratulations.
happening the first week of May, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I signed up for it, but I'm going to do it. I was telling my friend, I'm going with a girlfriend. I'm like, okay, because I really was like being Debbie Downer about this. And I'm like, all right, I got to just, walk the walk and not say. So I told myself, don't change the goal, let the goal change you. So
Yeah.
that's my April. I'm letting the goal change me. We're gonna make this work, and it's gonna be great. But definitely just at least 30 minutes every single day. Just so much for not just physical health, but my mental health is really key. I guess I would almost do it now more for my mental health and wellness than for my physical after I've gotten into that, habit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think that sounds boring at all. I think
Okay.
that sounds incredible because it's not the bland, stead answer of exercise is a thing. I mean, you've already, through your explanation there, explained a whole bunch of benefits that you get from it, and the various different settings and the variety that you introduce and such like that, the stimulations, the different types and
Mhm.
styles of stimulants that you're going to encompass as well. I love that. That as a guy who likes to do something very similar each day, I
Mhm.
completely resonate. Before I let you go, Tonya, where can people find out more about you? And you have a bit of a special offer to talk about
Yes,
just now as
I
well.
do. Well, my brand is Motion and Mindset.
Yeah,
So if you are into social media, that is my brand on Facebook and Instagram.
yeah,
My website is motionandmindset.com.
yeah,
And then I have a 30-day, um, it's a guide. It's a guide that I created for my community, and I would love to offer it to anyone that would be interested. It's 30 days to improve your mental health and physical wellness. So it has 30 different activities that, again, are just around maybe having coffee with a friend, creating that space
yeah,
for yourself, for that connection. And then also some physical activities, some maybe mental health, journaling, that type of thing. So if you're interested in that, I'm sure you'll add it in the notes, but it's motionandmindset.com and then / love yourself. So if you click that link, you'll just need your email, and then it will send it to your email. And if
yeah.
you don't see it in your inbox, check your spam or your promotions folder, because as you may know, when you opt into new things, your computer's not quite sure it's a legit or not.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would love to have you have that. It's great. It's ready for spring, and it would be, fun to kick off your spring and summer with some new and fun ideas.
Absolutely. I love it. Tonya, thank you very, very much again. As
Yeah,
always, I love your story. I love what
thank
you
you.
did with your experiences. I'm going to absolutely sign up to the Love Yourself 30-day
Yay!
challenge as well, and would encourage anyone else to do that. And I can't thank you enough. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again at some point.
That would be amazing. And on the website, there's a primal quiz button. So even yourself, if you want to know your primal question, I'll send you a little, snippet about all of those things, and just add more context and more self-awareness as we go forward too. So
Excellent. I'm going to do that. Thanks again.
awesome. Absolutely.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. spinninstructor.com, and while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.